another Taste Talk. It's one of our Friday night cooking demonstrations tonight. So I would like to welcome everyone. I'm Christine Duke, the Continuing Education Manager at Kendall College at National Louis University, and I would like to welcome Shruti Swaminathan back yet again. One second, I see let's make sure we've got you spotlit. There she is, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to be learning from her today a recipe that I've actually sent out to those of you who are part of our email list. If you are not and would like to join our email list to get our recipes or to be notified of upcoming Taste Talks, please reach out at taste@nl.edu and we'd be more than happy to get you the information. And Suruthi is going to be demonstrating a truffle butter mushroom pasta today. So I myself am a huge fan of truffles and mushroom and all those fun guys. So Suruthi, please take it away.
Okay, thanks guys for coming. I want to start this off just by saying that if you've seen some of my other talks, I'm big on kind of do not require a ton of specialty ingredients, specialized equipment, or complicated procedures, because a combination of those three things basically guarantees that I will order takeout, right? Because I don't want to go hunting for an ingredient that isn't readily available. Luckily, we live in Chicago and there many things are available, either at kind of like Indian stores or Mexican stores or Korean markets, or at your regular grocery store in the world aisle. If something takes too long, it's just not worth it to me. And if something requires specialized equipment, I have a book called Modernist Cuisine, which talks about using the sous vide for a lot of things. I can't justify getting that because I want to cook with the things that I already have. So with that in mind, the name of this recipe, the truffle butter mushroom pasta, you could think of it in a few ways. And I'm going to be talking about it as I cook because we are going to need some time to kind of sweat out some of the things. So let me get started and then I will tell you a little more about it. But basically, this is a great dish for cold winter nights, cold fall nights. Heck, even in the summer, if you just want to turn the AC up really high in your house, which I like do sometimes because I like to then get under a blanket. Anyway, so yes, super hearty. This is not the kind of dish you want to make if on that particular day you're trying to eat super healthy or counting calories or something. This is just not the dish for that. And not all dishes have to be that way. So this is one of my absolute favorites. And I'm going to get started just by sauteing some onions, which is like a regular way that I start a lot of my recipes. So I'm just going to point you over here.
Well,
wouldn't be one of my talks if I didn't drop the phone.
I was waiting for a tumble.
Yeah, this is at some point I'm going to have to figure out like a way that this doesn't happen. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Here's the pot. I've just heated up a large pot, and in it, it looked like it fell in the pot.
It did.
Almost fell on my knife. I don't know if that's any better, but it's good. I have a screen protector on for this reason. Okay, so we're going to start just by heating up some oil in this sort of large pot. And as it's heating up, I'm also going to add some butter to it. So although this dish is called the truffle butter mushroom pasta, that could mean a few different things. It could mean using truffle mushrooms, which are pretty hard to get and also very expensive. It could mean getting a ready-made butter that already has truffle kind of essence in it, either in the form of just truffle like oil a little bit built into the butter, or I know you can get this thing called a truffle pate, which is a bunch of truffle mushrooms basically like blended into a butter. It's like a compound butter in that way. Or like I said, you can just buy straight up truffle butter. But it turned out I said I was going to make this dish and I couldn't find truffle butter. So we're going to do the next best thing, which is also going to work out, which is we're still going to have butter in it. And we're going to finish everything with a little bit of truffle oil. That looks like this. So this is readily available. I think I just got this at like Mariana's or something. I know Trader Joe's has a version too. It's a tiny bottle that's lasted me a long time just because you need so little of it to really get that truffle flavor. And in fact, if you add too much of it, it's not going to taste good because it's just going to overwhelm all of the other nuanced flavors in here. So we're going to use cremini mushrooms today, and we're going to use some butter. And then we're also going to add in actual truffle butter. This one I think is from, the image looks like white truffle. I don't particularly know the difference between each one. It just says there's truffle in here. It also says there's truffle flavor in here. So I'm gonna have to look into exactly what truffle flavor entails. But if you look at the bottom of the jar, you can see that there's little bits of truffle mushroom.
Yeah, I think definitely talk to wherever you are making a purchase of the white or black truffle oil, because they might be able to talk a little bit more about the differences of the two of them. That's actually something I'm not sure of myself. Now I feel I really need to get to know that. But I think with what Sruthi is going to be making today, either one is applicable to this recipe. So
that's right. Okay, and I'll also mention here that something that I do when I'm putting butter in here is I always, when I'm cooking with butter, put in a little bit of oil. And the reason for that is that butter has a lower melting point. So it's just going to kind of get hot faster and it's going to burn faster. And I'm not looking for any kind of browned butter situation here. And sometimes it can even go beyond that browned butter situation to an actual like burnt situation. So you don't want that. So anytime I put in butter, I always put in some oil along with it so that it kind of heats up evenly. And I keep the heat relatively low as I'm doing this, again, so that it doesn't unexpectedly burn. So that sound that I'm hearing sounds very good. And it looks like we're ready to add the onions. This is a lot of onion. You do not need to add this much. This is one large red onion and two kind of smaller white onions. If you love onions, go ahead and do it. The reason I do it this way is when I make my chicken curry, for example, or when I make really anything that has onion, I love to kind of slowly cook the onions down to the point where they kind of blend into the sauce at the end. And so you're not kind of biting into bits of like sharp raw onion. And instead, you're just getting kind of that background taste of the onion, which I really, really love. So I'm going to switch you back here. So you can see that I'm going to add these onions in right now. So it's hot. That's the sound you want to hear every time you add something to the pan. Never add anything to a cold pan. Okay. Just saute this a little bit. Again, you don't want to burn it. You don't really want to crisp it. You see it takes up a good amount of the pot, but this will kind of reduce as some of the water comes out. This alone smells great. And all it is butter, oil, and onion. So we're going to continue to smell better. And I want to point out here that like, I used to be the kind of person that, you know, when I say, oh, a quick pasta meal, before I started cooking quite a bit, I used to just think like pasta from a box, sauce from a jar, eat it. And then I just found myself like very dissatisfied with that. Not because the sauce is bad or the pasta is bad, but I found myself just always craving something a little bit more, you know, whether it was a little more heat or a little more spice or a little more something else. I was always kind of craving a little more of that. And so what I started doing is I still use canned pasta sauces or like bottled pasta. I have nothing against them. I love them. I think if you find a brand that you love and that kind of works well for you and you know it's consistent and you love it, use it. But what I do is I use it as a base and then modify it. So I might do something to it like adding a bunch of onions and peppers and cooking them down and then pouring the sauce in. I might add a little drizzle of truffle oil at the end. I might stir in a couple tablespoons of tahini as it's cooking. I may pour in a little bit of coconut milk that I have left over from yesterday or 2 days ago before it goes bad. So I always take advantage of those sauces, whether it's a red sauce or a white sauce, but I'm always looking for like, how can I kind of add some oomph to this sauce? And I think doing that does a few things. One, it saves you time in that you're not like starting from crushed tomatoes and like letting it simmer and da 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 da. And it also lets you get creative with whatever you have. You know, it helps you kind of say, what's in my fridge right now? What's in my freezer right now? What can I kind of add to this? And then it also lets you kind of not waste things, I feel. So I mentioned using, you know, a little jar of like coconut milk. Like I almost never use an entire can of coconut milk unless for Thanksgiving, instead of turkey, I make coconut curry cod, right? Because we don't like turkey. So there I used a lot of coconut milk, but there's still some left over, you know, and I'm not going to add it to this one, but I'm going to think of adding it to something else. So I encourage you to kind of start with a good base and then add flavors to it that you know you already like, or flavor combinations that you already like. Okay, let's switch back here. This is just kind of cooking away nicely. So a couple things here, like I don't want this to be on super high heat because one, the butter can still burn at this stage. And two, I'm not looking to crisp up the onions. I'm just looking to soften them up a little bit because we're later on going to continue to cook them or simmer them in a sauce. And so they're going to continue to cook them, but I just want them to soften a little bit now, release some of their water, and release some of that harshness that can come from raw onions. While this is cooking, I'm going to add a few things at this stage. I'm going to add in some salt, and this is just kosher salt. I'm also going to add in some special flavor, sage. So I just have dried sage here. And the interesting thing here is I never used to cook with sage. I was really big on dried basil, Italian herb seasoning in general, like the blend you can get on oregano, and thyme even, but I never used to add in sage. And one time I thought I was picking up oregano, but I accidentally picked up sage at the grocery store. And so I figured I had bought it for a recipe and I was like, I guess I'm going to have to use it. And it turned out incredible. So since then, like having a little bit of dried sage in my pantry is just a staple. All right, so now I've just added in the dried sage to this onion. I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit. And while that's cooking, I'm also going to add in some paprika. This will add a little color, add a little bit of like sweet, not really sweetness. It's almost like a sweet odor, and it's pretty mild, I would say, because this isn't the smoked paprika. The reason I'm not adding smoked paprika here, and you can if you'd like, the reason I'm not is I really want the flavor of the truffle to shine here. And when I add in smoked paprika, I love the flavor of it, but that's kind of the predominant thing that I can smell and taste. And I want the truffle to shine here, but I want this paprika to kind of be in the background, providing a little bit of warmth, a little bit of that kind of sweeter smell. So that smells good. You see, even adding a little bit of paprika and sage, how it changes up the color of the onions. Okay, next thing we're going to add in is some green chili. So these are serrano peppers. I was like listening to some very good music while I was chopping this because I thought I was chopping one and ended up chopping 2.5. That is all not going to go in here because this is a serrano pepper. I'm just going to add in like a little bit. I know I'll end up using the rest of it, but of course with the serrano pepper or any kind of heat you add, adjust it to your taste. I do like things a little bit spicier. I'm going to be taking this over to my best friend's place later, and I know they like it spicier, so. Okay, and at this stage, actually, now might be a good time to, I just made like a little pocket in there, or a little hole in there. I'm gonna add just like tiny bit of oil because now I'm gonna add in the garlic. I did not add garlic in at the very beginning because it does burn quickly. And especially since we were cooking this down and kind of sauteing the onions for a while before adding in the liquid that we're gonna add, I did not want the garlic to burn. So all I've done here is I've added a little bit of oil in the middle, again, because I don't want it to burn by just hitting the hot pan and searing right away. I just mix that in, and now I'm gonna mix it in with all the onion and serrano peppers and spices. Okay. All right. And this is a stage where I mentioned this in a few of my talks, where at this stage, this can become anything. I always try to remind myself of this as I'm cooking, especially since I don't cook with recipes. And to be frank, I haven't made this exact recipe before, ever. Have I done versions where I add sage in there? Yeah. Have I added versions where I don't add garlic? Yep. But this exact version with all of the same proportions and the same red and white onion combo, no. And that's okay with me, because again, if you're cooking with what you have, it's good to kind of just go with the flow of what's available and what needs to be used up. Okay, garlic is in there. That does not need to cook for too long before anything else. It doesn't need to cook for too much longer, or it might burn. All right, next thing we're gonna add in is these cremini mushrooms, which are also known as baby bella mushrooms. Now add this into the pot. I'll just slice them. I saw that they have like sliced versions at the grocery store too. I usually don't go for the sliced versions. I feel like because they're sliced and more of the surface area of the mushroom is exposed, they tend to brown a little quicker. And when I bring them home, I feel like the quality of them just isn't the same inside. Maybe, so if you see this, see how the inside is kind of all white, white like this. With the sliced ones, I find that they're all kind of mottled and have little pops in them. And I don't like that. So I like to kind of bring them home and then just slice them myself. So another way you could do this, let's say you were making the sauce. We're going to be using linguine today for the pasta. But let's say you wanted to, I don't know, put this in a lasagna and make like a mushroom ragu or something like that. I would still do, like, I wouldn't change any of what I've added in here, the ingredients themselves. But what I might change is I might cut these mushrooms about to the size of those onions. And if you do that, then they'll cook down a little more. You won't have as much bite. They won't look as big. And you can really develop kind of a sauce with them, even by changing up whether you want a white sauce or a red sauce. This is where at this stage, if you wanted a red sauce, like pasta sauce or a red ragu, and the mushrooms were cut really small, you could just put in a jar of your favorite bottled red sauce here. And that would do it. That would be the sauce itself. But we're actually going to be doing a white sauce today. Okay, I'm going to have this cook just a little bit. I'm going to turn the heat down, and then I'm also going to put a lid on this so that it can cook a little more. All right, I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions at all so far? No, seems like we're all following along nicely.
Okay,
so.
Great. Yeah, I just like,
I'm trying to think what else you could do with what you've started with, because I know sometimes we start brainstorming on what directions you could go in with where you're at in your recipe, because that's always
so this
fun.
would 100% be a taco filling for me. Like I would cook this up and then I would just probably make like a little sauce on the side, either like a cilantro avocado sauce, just whip it up in like a mini processor with some garlic, olive oil, lemon, and then just put this in and then drizzle with that for some acidity, for a punch of green, and for some cream. My mouth is filling with spit, just like talking about. I'm sorry. I'm making what I'm not having tacos today, but as I was talking about tacos, that just happened. So.
It's just a very Pavlovian response. You say tacos, and right away people start salivating. So, yeah. So,
Yes. Was there a
Lisa,
question?
yes, creminis are baby Bellas. So you bought
Mhm.
the right mushroom.
So I only realized that because I went to, so I live in the West Loop and there's a farmer's market that happens in Mary Bartlemy Park that's near me. And on Saturdays, like through early November, they have a farmer's market there. And it's like Green City or something. They have them throughout the city. And I went there once and I was like, oh, can I like have these creminis? And I was like, do you also have baby Bellas? And they were like, that's the same thing. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, cremini is just another name for baby portobello mushrooms. So
Mhm.
there you go. That's how I only found out like this year. So any recipes that have them, they're interchangeable.
Yeah, there is a great mushroom vendor at the Green City markets. That's for sure. Someone mentioned that to me. So yeah.
They
I love all varieties of mushrooms and everything myself. So um I'm always down to try a new mushroom.
Yeah, and you know what I would say? Like here I'm using this because this is what was available. If you want to try this with like an assortment of mushrooms, so if you want to do wild mushrooms, if you want to put some shiitake in here that you reconstitute in water, you get them dry, you reconstitute them, or just get the shiitake from the supermarket. If you want to, the only thing I used to use these a lot, but I don't as much anymore, is white button mushrooms. So I use them in certain things, but I feel like when I'm really counting on some flavor from the mushrooms, the white button ones to me just don't seem to have as much as the cremini slash baby bella. I feel like the white button ones are very good when you're using it to fill something else that also has a ton of other stuff in it. So if you're making stuffed mushrooms, um, you can, I've done that because my stuffed mushrooms will sometimes have like sausage in it or like some kind of vegan meat or depending on who's eating it. And it adds to the bulk of it without you relying on it to be kind of the sole flavoring in the dish. So
Mhm. So someone also like just messaged me and was like, the portobellos might have kind of like a stronger taste though that would kind of knock out the truffle taste. Yeah, I mean the creminis, they're like the mini versions of the portobellos. So they're actually one going to be like kind of nicer to work with, and because they're the smaller version, the flavor isn't so like hit you in the face as the portobello is. Where it's also going to matter on how much of the mushroom you're actually using within it, and then how much of the truffle oil you're using. So sometimes it's something you might want to play with a little bit if you're trying out different mushrooms in it. um there's definitely ones that lend themselves more to Asian dishes and ones that lend themselves more to the Italian dishes and stuff.
totally,
And
yeah.
so like the creminis and the portobellos and things like that are definitely going to be more in that Italian pasta family and such. Like
Exactly.
I wouldn't want to take an gnocchi and use it in anything like this. It's like no, that doesn't
Yeah,
belong here. Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I think also when you consider the texture of the mushroom, like the shiitake has a very different texture. It's a little more chewy. It's like a little tougher. Some of like the woodier mushrooms and trumpet mushrooms and stuff look very beautiful. So with those, I don't know that you'd want to like slice and dice them into like little mini things because part of the this sound ridiculous. Part of the wonder of eating that mushroom is just looking at it visually. They're like, this is how I think about food. Like there's certain they just look so beautiful that you're like, I don't want to really small chop this up really small and make it into nothing. I would rather, cook that with a little bit of bok choy or something where you can see the shapes and the sizes and the textures and then present it along. It's still cooked. It's still going to taste good, but it doesn't have to be like turned into mush to kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, we were brainstorming kind of what else we could do with this. You can also turn this into an Indian dish. If you just didn't add paprika and sage and add a couple, like if you add, turmeric, cumin, coriander, red chili powder, something like that, you can always add some tomatoes in and make a really, I would call it like a mushroom curry, because in Indian cooking, curry doesn't just mean dishes which have a liquid or a gravy. It means any vegetable that's like sauteed. So I distinguish that by calling it a dry curry, but in Indian cooking, I was like, a mushroom curry. And you could eat this with like naan, with roti, with bread. Like sometimes I've had leftover of this and put it in between grilled cheese and then just put it in like a panini maker. So
oh yeah, just taking this and making it like as a layer in your grilled cheese.
Yeah.
So good.
Another thing I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I'm going to start this next part while I talk about this. So nothing, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on kind of meal prepping, because I've never been a person that meal preps in that. We're going to add about 2 cups of this. Let's go ahead. Okay, guys, I'm going to add some half and half. You could add heavy cream. I'm going to add half and half. You could add heavy cream again. So, or you know what else you could do if you don't have half and half and you want a white sauce, you could take a jar of Alfredo sauce and add it in here at this stage. Because it's a white sauce, it's creamy, it's cream based, it already has cheeses in it. That would go really well here as well. So I'm just going to add in 1. That's about 2 cups of that. And then I'm just going to let this kind of come to a simmer, and then we can always adjust. We can always add some more of it if you want. I've had a few experiences recently where my sauce is too watery, so I'm trying to like go a little bit slower on that. I'm also going to add in just a little bit of chicken broth. You could add vegetable broth, chicken broth, whatever you like, just a little bit. But again, being mindful of the fact that I don't want this to be super thin. But as we all know, like once you add in the pasta, it'll thicken up. And if you add in some of the pasta water, while it seems like you're thinning it out initially, yes, you are. But because that pasta water has a lot of the starch from the pasta, that's going to continue to thicken it if you leave it in the fridge overnight. So that's why when you look at pasta the next day, it always looks a little thicker. And I'll sometimes need to like thin it out before eating. Okay. So
yeah, and I'm sorry, it's always a good idea to save some of that starchy pasta water if that's something that you haven't learned to do yet, or it's not something you normally do. It's definitely something to start doing, and kind of like it used to, because it's going to give you a little extra thickness in your sauces and stuff like that, and you're really going to like that little trick.
Yep, exactly. So I used to just kind of dump out my pasta water and then reconstitute anything or kind of thin anything out using water. But I feel like with the pasta water, you've already salted it. Sometimes there's a little bit of oil in there to keep the pasta from sticking, and it has the starch from the pasta. So while it may thin it out, it doesn't like water it down. Though that kind of seems contradictory. That's okay. Do you guys see this? Like usually a white mushroom pasta sauce will be straight up white. But because to this, we've added the sage, the paprika, we've browned the onions just a little bit in the butter. And we've added in, what did we add in here? I even forgot. And the mushrooms themselves are going to impart some color to this. You can see that it's almost like this nice, like white and orange color in here that I love. And then this is what will ultimately coat the pasta, which I've already finished cooking. Actually, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move this to another burner in the back and let that simmer away. Do you guys have a favorite burner on your stove? This one's mine. I'm like always on this burner.
I think everyone has that situation. So
yeah. I'm like, why does just this part get dirty all the time with like some splatter elsewhere? Okay, so here is something that I think is a really fun way to top off this pasta. So, you know, the sauce is going to simmer. It's going to get nice and like creamy. The mushrooms are going to soften a little bit. We're going to add cheese at the end, all creamy, great. What I love is some textural variety in my foods. So to do that, what I'm actually going to do is I've gotten another pan. This is not a one pot meal. Maybe there's a way to do that, but this is not that. I'm heating up this pan. I'm going to heat up a little bit of oil in it. And what I've done here is I've chopped up those same cremini mushrooms, but I've chopped them up like I've diced them almost. They're little like small things. So it's almost like when you have, Christine, what's that thing called? Oh God, like the ham that comes in little pieces, not prosciutto. Oh God, okay, I'm gonna remember it later, but it's like you get little pieces of it and you just fry it up and it's ham. and they're little cubes.
Just like
not-
ham cubes. I'm like,
No. God, what
Like,
is
what are
that?
you- oh, pancetta.
Pancetta. Yes, I was gonna Google it right now. Pancetta.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks like pancetta, yeah? Like it's like
Mhm.
kind of the size of it. So I've just really diced those same mushroom. Oops. Okay, I guess the oil's hot. So I've diced some mushrooms, and then I've also diced some red bell pepper. And this is an example of something that I have not added to this dish before. And the reason for that is I had red bell pepper left over in the fridge. And I decided yesterday when I was writing up the recipe, I was like, well, I should just put some of these in here. So going back to that textural kind of variety thing, I don't want everything to just be like creamy. I want something to be different in there. So what we're actually going to create now as this sauce simmers and thickens in the back is we're going to create a crispy garnish or a topping for this pasta. And we're going to do that with red bell peppers. And you want to have the heat pretty high here because you don't want them to steam. You actually want them to fry almost. With bell peppers, it's a little bit harder just because they do have so much water in them. So we're just going to do our best to turn up the heat. There's some oil in there. I'm going to let that just sear for a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these out and I'm going to put the mushrooms in and do the same thing with a little more oil. Other options for this include, I was thinking about doing this, kind of popping them in the air fryer if you want. So while everything else is cooking, you could just take, I have this, it's like a toaster oven air fryer in one situation, and it has a pretty small tray. Let me show you. It comes with a basket like this. So what you could do is just kind of on one half of it, put the peppers on one half of it, put the mushrooms, salt, pepper, season. That's all they need. So I'm going to season this with salt and pepper. And then just pop it in the air fryer for a little bit until they crisp up. And you don't need as much oil. There's already a lot of oil and cream and things in the other thing. And then when they're ready, that can keep going while you're preparing the rest of your stuff. But again, I didn't want to like limit it to air fryer. You can do that if you want. You can even pop it in the oven if you want, if you just want to bake it. And then at the very end, just broil a little bit to get some color on there and get a little bit of crispiness. And that would be great to add. You can also, if you have a large enough pan and friends who eat both mushrooms and peppers, cook them together. But one of my friends this evening doesn't like pepper, so I'm kind of making them separately so that I can like take it on the side and some of us can add it and she doesn't need to add it. Okay, so for the peppers themselves, all we're going to add to that is a little bit of salt and pepper. They don't need anything else. The sauce is full of flavor. You can see the sauce is kind of bubbling away there. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. So all we're going to do is add some salt. And some pepper. I'm also a big fan of like doing one thing while the other thing is kind of happening on its own to save time. So typically when I cook, I don't have a full like mise en place situation. I like chopping the onions, I get those started. While those are going, I do the onion or I do the chilies and the garlic and things. But that does involve a lot of kind of back and forth and you're like checking and all this. In this way, I do it this way for these classes because obviously it makes things more efficient. But when I do it this way, it's also a little more calm because I'm not like running around. Ooh, look at this. This is the kind of thing you're looking for. Let me see if I can. You see like a little bit of color on that pepper.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of thing you're looking for. Not looking to get them blackened, but I will say, if you want to fry these, you can. Add a little more oil, a little more heat. You can fry them. I just didn't want to use as much oil this time, so a little more, and then I'm going to take these out. Okay. I'm gonna put this back in this bowl, so that should be fine. Any other questions while we wait?
Anybody? Yeah, that sauce is definitely bubbling over there. It looks good.
What was that?
The sauce is definitely bubbling over there.
It is, yes. This is where it's hard. It's like at this stage, I'm like, it's thickened a little bit. I want to add some more, but I don't want it to be like all watery, little watery stuff. So at this stage, I'm going to taste it. I should probably be tasting a little more along the way. It's a habit I just haven't picked up. I'm just going to try a little bit of the sauce. Oh my God. Okay, garlic, A+. Add a lot of garlic. Half and half. Yep. Don't substitute milk. Very good. The sage. It's weird, like sage is an herb, and usually you think of herbs as this like fresh element to a dish, but I guess that's also fresh herbs. When you're adding dry herbs, they're kind of like in the background. Here, I feel like the taste of the sage almost makes it taste creamier, which makes no sense because creamy is a texture and the flavor of sage is a taste. But there you go. It just like tastes very nice and creamy. It tastes very nice and rich. These peppers are doing what I want them to do.
Yeah, someone said that they always associate sage with like the turkey at Thanksgiving and everything. It's like, yeah, sage does kind of have that like reputation. And I think that's why people don't tend to reach for it all the time, is because they think of, you know, it's like moment that it shines the most at the Thanksgiving meal. So, but yes, sage is something that, you know, people should really explore some more.
Yeah. And I know that, you know, dried herbs in general pack more of a punch than fresh herbs. Just like canned tomatoes pack more of a punch than like fresh tomatoes. But I feel like with sage in particular, maybe it's just because I'm extra sensitive to the taste of it. I love it. Because I feel like a little bit really goes a long way with sage. Whereas I don't feel that as much with like basil or oregano. Something about sage, maybe because I also associate sage with like a brown butter, garlic, sage chicken or fish or something where the sage really, really shines. Where I love to use actually a combination of like dried sage, but also a little bit of fresh sage leaves at the very end. And they end up tasting very different. So, all right, guys, we're going to call this done.
Yeah, you've got some good color on that, definitely.
Yeah, it has some color on it. I mean, again, you're not looking to fry it. If you want to fry it, add a little more oil and fry it. If you want to air fry it, go for it. But we are basically safety first, going to turn off the stove. And then I'm just going to put this back into the same container that I had it. And then remembering that there's a little bit of oil in there and it is hot, so it might continue to cook a little bit, but not too much. And you can see this thing was basically full, and look how much it's reduced once I cook it out, once I cook all of kind of the water out. All right, so now we're gonna do the same thing with the mushrooms. Also has a lot of water in there. You see there's some browning around here. That's fine. You don't want to get rid of that. That is flavor that we want to keep. And then same thing, and you'll see I'm not complicating things with this. I'm just salt, pepper, and cooking on high heat, like that's or medium high-ish heat. That's really it.
It's funny, you're cooking this all right now, and I have cooking happening in the other part of the house. So I'm like,
What's happening there?
I'm smelling a whole nother meal going on right now.
Wait, what's your husband cooking?
All I know is he's making a pasta dish, but I don't know what he's making. I don't smell mushrooms though, so.
Okay. Okay, so you guys can see that's like nicely bubbling away. That's great. I've tasted it. Tastes great. Might actually be a good time while this cooks up. Why don't we season this with a little salt and pepper? Okay, I'm very excited to eat this. I can't wait till this is done. Also because mushroom is one of my favorite things. I like making it in like different ways, and pasta also. So, all right, just gonna stir this up. So there's like some water collecting in here, but that's okay. That's why you again want the higher heat when you're doing this, so that it's not kind of steaming in that water, and you want that water to kind of evaporate as it comes out of the mushrooms. And you'll see how much this reduces too. This took up this entire bowl, and it is not going to be the case when it comes in or when it's done. All right, while that happens, we're gonna
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, now we're gonna add our pasta into the sauce. I pre-cooked this pasta. And here I just have some, it's just linguine, you can see. You can use any shape of pasta, anything you like. Like I said, you could make this into a lasagna sauce if you want. I'm not really picky on shape, although there is one shape that I do not like at all.
People always have one that they don't like.
Really?
I feel like everyone's got one that they're like, I'm not a fan of that one. So
okay, I don't like the corkscrew one. What is that called?
Rotini?
Yeah, it's like all spiral. I just have never liked it, which is sad because I feel like with the shape of it, it should really be able to get a lot of flavor in those little nooks and crannies. I must have had like a bad rotini experience or something, but yeah. Okay, this is cooking up nicely. It definitely needs to kind of crisp up a little more. But do you see how much this reduced? Like, look how little that became. I almost was going to use 2 whole packages of mushrooms. Like, oh, I threw that out. But I was almost going to use 2 packages just because I love them so much. But then I was like, control yourself. You don't need that.
So actually, the question I was going to ask you before is, what kind of pasta are you doing with this? Because I was really getting curious as to see what was going to come out. Because when I saw that you wanted to do this truffle butter mushroom pasta, of course, I mentally filled in the blank on what the pasta was. And I'm sure everyone else did. Everyone put
what did you
their
think it was
own mental placeholder in it. And mine, of course, was probably, a little over the top, of course, because I don't do things mildly. I actually picture the pasta being itself a mushroom ravioli to like even go further beyond with it. So
interesting. I do love that because I am a fan of introducing the same ingredient in different forms throughout a dish. So I've done it here in a more simplistic way where it's like it's cremini mushrooms in the sauce and then it's fried. It's like prepared a different way.
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier, using dried sage with like a fresh sage piece in there. And sometimes I'd use like coconut shavings along with coconut milk, which tastes very different. That's very interesting, Christine. You know what? Making pasta like from scratch is just not something I've done because I feel like the amount of time it takes to make it versus eat it, that ratio doesn't work out for me, but I do love eating fresh pasta. I've taken a few cooking classes where I've gone and like to chopping block or to sur la table or something, and they've done it and I've had no complaints. But that would be interesting. But Trader Joe's, if anyone does want to try what Christine just suggested and doesn't want to make their own pasta, Trader Joe's has in their refrigerated section a delicious mushroom ravioli.
Yes.
And I've used that. I don't know if I did that in one of the classes, but I've used that for like different pasta dishes.
So. Actually, if anyone, like when you saw the name, when you saw what this was going to be, if you had a specific pasta shape that you already kind of thought she was going to do or mentally already like figured it was going to go, I'd love to see what your pasta shape fill in the blank was. Just drop it in the chat because it'd be really interesting to see what you guys were thinking.
Interesting, yeah.
Lisa said a tubular pasta.
Ooh, I could see that like a manicotti or rigatoni.
I'm thinking like a bucatini. Like a little thicker with the like whole. I love a bucatini. Ooh, Bob said angel hair. So yeah, we're all over the place on what you were thinking with the pasta.
Absolutely. Okay, we're gonna call this done.
Wait, I gotta read this one. I feel so bad. The only decisions I need to make this Friday evening is whether or not to include pineapple in my pepperoni pizza. And this dish looks so good. I say go for the pineapple on your pizza because then you mentally put yourself in Hawaii for your dinner. And, think about maybe making this dish sometime in the future or convincing someone to make this dish for you in the future.
That's right. Okay, guys, this is so pathetic. I should have really used another. Look at this.
Yeah, you were talking about using more, and it's like, yeah, those mushrooms, they really sweat down immensely. So
I really use more, but now that's the garnish, and that's okay. All right, so now let's go back to this pasta really quick. So what I did with the linguine is I didn't cook it to the point I'd want it to be when I ate it, meaning I undercooked it just a little bit because I knew it was going to be in the sauce. Now, I had pictured that this would be in a little more of a watery sauce and I could cook in it, but I think even just the warmth and like the heat of this pan and the little bit of liquid in here is going to help. I didn't undercook it by too much, just a little bit so that it doesn't overcook once I actually add it to this. All right, so now that it's in here, let's stirring it up. Got this is gonna be good. Okay, you guys see that? Just looks like a big like creamy mush.
Oh yeah,
it's kind of what you want. And what we're gonna do, because I would like to thin this out a little because I know as it's already pretty thick and I know that as it cools, it's going to get thicker. So I'm just gonna add in a little bit of the reserved pasta water. This is just the water I cooked the pasta in with salt and with a little bit of oil that I had added to thin out, or not to thin out, to keep the pasta strands from sticking, keep the linguine strands from sticking. So just add a little bit at a time. You can always add more. Stir this up. So do any of you watch Barefoot Contessa, like Ina Garten? I love her on Food Network. So she makes a chicken with 40 cloves of garlic that's like insanely good.
I've had a 40 clove of garlic chicken before, yes. And I believe it was her recipe that my husband used.
Yeah.
Delish.
And when I first started making this dish, it was actually inspired by a truffle pasta that she makes with mushrooms. But her version is very like it doesn't have all the spices. It doesn't have extra seasonings. It's based on a tub of truffle butter, like 2 tubs of truffle butter. And she kind of makes it. And I was like, I don't want to go hunting for truffle butter. I also want to add more seasonings to it. I also want a bunch of heat in it, hence all the serrano peppers. And I don't want to add full cream or whatever. So you make little adaptations, but then I was like, well, I want some texture at the top. So there are some recipes that are just born out of like me looking in my fridge and seeing what I want to do. There's other ones that are born out of like seeing someone make something and be like, that looks good, but I want to tweak it, So that's where I tweaked it. And I've made different versions of this before. Like I said, like without the red peppers, sometimes with, I've folded in arugula at the very end to something like this, for like a very peppery, crispy, a sharper taste, but not in a bad way. Like, because that cuts through the richness of this pasta super nicely. So I've just at the end, like had some baby arugula and just put it in and just mixed it up. Doesn't need to cook. That's turned out really well. Add some really nice color. I've also done this with, added a little, made more of a, I don't know what the official name is, like a rosé sauce, which is like red and white. So I've like added a little, I had like half a jar of some red sauce left over and I'm like, well, add it in, stir it in. It's a little pink sauce, but then the truffle flavor is still really prominent. Okay, so at this stage, I think I'm gonna add a little bit more of this. Stir this up.
Someone else recommended the Barefoot Contessa's newsletter. So.
Oh, really? Is she still writing those?
I guess so.
Or her team still writing those?
Yeah, it's still being written and coming out under her name.
Oh, that's great. Christine. Very specific, but good to know. Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so this is here. And so far, This is a butter mushroom pasta, and we are going to make it a truffle butter mushroom pasta right now. So here you go. We have this little bit of oil. We are going to just drizzle it on top. Well, a little more than a drizzle in one spot, but and I've never really like cooked with truffle oil. I always use it as kind of a finishing oil.
That's always a good tip too, because people will spend a lot of money on truffle oils and some truffle products, and they'll start the dish with it, and you're cooking away so much of the flavor. That heat is
That's
really,
right.
it's a really delicate flavor that can like really dissipate from too much work and too much heat. So you want to make sure you're finishing with it.
That's right. So I finished with it. The smell's already really good. And you know what the other interesting is, Christine? Like to your point, when you say, oh, it smells really good, my whole house smells like it, I opened the lid, and that's all the flavor escaping. So I don't really recommend that you like cover things up while you're cooking all the time. It really depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to cook things and get them crispy, then covering them is just going to steam them and retain water, which is not what you want. But anyway, like this, so I just added not too much. It's probably like a tablespoon and a half total of truffle oil for this entire pot of pasta. And you already can really, really smell it. We're gonna put everything we have a few minutes. We can go ahead and do a tasting, but I do want to finish with the last couple things. Okay, I have some Parmesan cheese. Tempted to add the whole thing, but I will not because there's a lot of creaminess happening already. I'm just going to add a little bit of Parmesan. See, this is one of those moments where I wish Parmesan is a different color so that I could add some oomph to this. We're also then going to squeeze a little bit of lemon in. And this is what's going to cut through that richness. Okay. I'm going to give this a good stir. Then I'm going to plate it and then show it to you with the topping, since my friend doesn't eat peppers and I don't want to add it to this. Don't you love that sound of just like creamy, like Oh, my dog's here. I must have spilled something up. I found a little piece of serrano pepper that I dropped on the ground that I luckily picked it up because
that would not be good. Yeah.
And she would have rued the day she decided to snack off my kitchen floor. So, all right, let me grab a bowl and then I'm going to take a bowl for myself. So let me grab.
I know, I think we all wish we could take a bowl for ourselves.
I know, God, I wish you guys could like smell this. I wonder how far out that.
My gosh, Zoom, come on! I keep asking you for television.
I know.
Make this technology happen.
Like that. Can you imagine how many people would?
Oh my God!
Be a premium product, premium offering, you know. Okay. So now I'm just going to grab a little bit of this pasta. Okay, I'll show it to you once like everything's plated. So I just have the pasta in here now. More. And then I'm just going to top it with some of the peppers and some of the mushrooms. So let me put that on top. Looks like that.
Nice.
Okay. I'm going to grab a fork. Let's try it. One of these times I'm going to try it and it's going to taste horrible. I'm going to have to be like,
be like, no.
Okay, a little bit hot. Yep. Yep. Wow. I'm really glad. Oh my God, that's good. I didn't have the rest of this in here because it is already spicy. Maybe listen to worse music when I chop veggies next time. But there you have it. This is a linguine with a truffle butter mushroom sauce, where you can kind of make this truffle without having ready-made truffle butter, without having truffle pate. All you got to do is just buy a little bit of that, drizzle that over at the end, and start off with some butter. So I think that's it.
Awesome.
You can also add, and you can always add in a little more like lemon to your taste. And the lemon really, I didn't add too much. Like, you look at the actual quantity of it, but without that, I know that this would have just kind of like lingered on the tongue in an unpleasant way, if that makes sense. This would be too rich.
Well, amazing as always. And of course, we're all jealous of what you get to enjoy right now. Does anyone have any questions before we wrap it up for today? So we want some instructions on how you should best clean the mushrooms. Do you rinse them in water or just wipe them off with a paper towel?
I rinse them in water. I just try not to let them soak, because they are like sponges, and even though they're kind of filled with water, they'll absorb more water, and you don't want that, even though you kind of cook them down. So I always do like 3 rounds of them, just because mushrooms are especially dirty. So I'll like fill it up once, let it sit for like 15-20 seconds, dump it out, second time, same thing, third time, same thing. And then I just leave them out while I prep everything else and then chop them up. I know with bigger portobello mushrooms that you have in sandwiches and stuff, they'll say just wipe off the cap, which I will do. But for these smaller ones, like, I'm not going to wipe like
it's a lot of work to
I'm not going to wipe 40 mushrooms. So
detail all your mushrooms.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Thank you guys for joining.
Of course. So I know some people are planning on making this recipe. So please let us know if you do, if you have pictures and stuff, even if it's just you enjoying it. We do enjoy that too. Thank you everyone for joining us this Friday evening. And I hope that you all are going to have a fantastic and fabulous weekend. More taste talks coming up next week. We have been like almost having a taste talk-a-palooza going on right now with a lot of our contributors kind of chiming in and everything. It's very exciting. Let me see. The next one we have on deck is going to be, on Monday. We have our favorite cheesemonger, Lydia Burns, back again to do a talk on pairing cheese with ports. So maybe you've never had port before. It's an amazing experience of fortified wine. So she's going to talk a little bit about putting those two together. It's a very Christmassy holiday season kind of pairing. So get excited for that. We hope to see you there. And thank you again, Shruti.
Yeah, I think I might be doing one next Friday.
Yes, I believe you are. Let me double check the calendar.
Yeah.
I think we've got 4 next week. So
awesome.
Yeah. So we've got port and cheese on Monday. Then we have, let me make sure I'm looking at the right week. Port and cheese on Monday. On Wednesday, we will be doing winter wines with Mary Ross. Lydia is gracing us with her presence again on Thursday to talk about a unique cheese dish, Kaspätzle. And then Saruthi's with us on Friday with her Instant Pot vegetarian chili. So
good to know. That's what I'm on.
You're like, yep, that's what you're making on Friday. So be prepared.
Keep that in mind. All right, thank you, Christine.
Yes, thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Bye, guys. See you later.
Bye.